Welcome to the Raise Manifest second episode. And today's episode, it's quite a unique one because I've been thinking maybe start a segment on cars you should never sell. These are cars which, you have driven them for years. They don't break, just regular maintenance, changing the suspension, oil change, the usuals. They don't, they have no drama, but not like they're very exciting as well, but they last long. So to kick off the session, today we have our press car here, which it has done quite some kilometers in the Kenyan market, in the Kenyan actually terrain. It knows Kenya some, I can say like 70% of Kenya, it knows 70% of Kenya. And for those Nissan haters, yeah, these ones last long. And there's always the debate between the old notes like this one and the new notes. Which is better? This one is called the E11. This is the first generation. However, this is the 2008 spec, which had minimal. It was a slight facelift from the first edition, the first generation. Just a change in the headlights and maybe the dashboard design, just at the gauge cluster area. But generally, it's the same first edition. Even the side, look at the side profile and all that. But the good thing about this car is it can withstand a beating. These cars, and I'm sure you have seen very many on the road. Even you find some registration KBY, KBX, especially the 205 models, the 206, 204, 204s actually as well. They hit the Kenyan market. So these are cars which have, I don't know, I hope that the Nissan Notes which are currently getting in the market, they last that long. But this one has proven. I've seen very many young guys buy it as a first car. It's quite cheap to buy. And these cars right now, since acquiring a new Note is almost 1 million, like 950, all that. But these ones you can go as low as 400, 350, depending on how the car has been maintained by the previous owners. So we'll take a quick tour around this car, see how Nissan played with the space, because they really did a good job with that, considering the cars that this particular edition was competing with at the time in 2008. So we'll take a quick tour. I'll show you the engine as well, and I'll tell you maybe some of the things you need to look after when you have this car, so at least it can serve you as it has served us and so many people in the Kenyan market. So let's go in. Yeah, so the first thing that hits you, it's roomy around this area, as you don't feel like your head is almost hitting the windscreen. It's roomy. You can easily, those people who like putting tissues on the dashboard, you can place the box here and you don't feel like it's on your face. It's in your face, it's in your space. So it feels roomy here. Even, I dare say, more than some crossover SUVs. And the knee room here is perfect. Probably at times you might feel like your side knee might hit the gear lever, but that's something to watch out. There is a provision for armrest for the driver. I've seen some notes, same, I think the 2009. They also had an armrest for the passenger, though the driver one comes as standard. And some even had an intelligent storage underneath the co-driver seat. However, this one doesn't have that. So, yeah. So here, everything is straightforward. The gauge clusters is there, easy to read. Unlike I noticed, like the NZD, it doesn't have the rev cluster. I mean, those are the cars which were getting into the market at that time. And I know there's quite some cars which don't have the rev meter, but this one has, and you can actually adjust so many things from your, some of these things, they look obvious, but they are there's some cars that miss them. You know, monitor your consumption and all that. And yeah, the ACs, all that is pretty direct. No, this car had no, a lot of madoido. And for the infotainment system, you can install, whichever. It can easily fit an 7-inch or an 8-inch screen. You can install an aftermarket system here. And of course, there's the storage space up here. As you can see here, it's full. That's an intelligent storage space where you can put your business cards, and such things. Yeah, and maybe your number 10 screw, what is it called? Spanners. They can easily fit there. Yeah, there's nothing much, just that around here. So let's check the back and see whether there's space at the back as well. So let me move this. In here, so here I'm comfortably seated with the driver's seat in my driving position. I'm 5'7", almost 5'8", and you can see there is good space for my knees. If going long distance, if I decide to tuck my feet here, there's good space. Maybe the only disadvantage could be the person sitting at the middle bench seat might feel a bit, the transmission channel might make them a bit uncomfortable, but it's not too high, but again, it's not too low. This car has done very long distances, and the bench seat is quite cushy, so it's not the best, but it's not bad. Yeah, there are also headrests too. There are 2 headrests. Unfortunately, for this particular unit, there is no armrest for the passengers sitting at the rear. Yeah, that's the only downside I can point out. Of course, there's this harness here for maybe a small bag. Yeah, probably will never be used unless the ladies, unless this car is owned by a lady. This one, guys, we might never use this one. Yeah, let's check the back. Yeah, before I forget, of course, my foot. We need to check the boot space. So for this particular car, we have like 2 feet of boot space, height with the length of about 4 feet. That is quite substantial for a car this class. I dare you, and I kid you not, the Demio 2008 model didn't have such a space. That one I can guarantee you. Even the Vitz. These, actually, most people who bought these during that time, let's say they walked to a yard, that was the selling point. Probably the salesman would just tell you, advantage of this car, it has a bigger boot space than the Vitz and the Demio. And remember this car that time, when they were selling at the yard, when they were new, it was ranging between 750 to 780. That's how they were costing. At the time, a Vitz was around, I'm talking about 2016. 2016, a Vitz was around 850 thereabout. There was a difference like of 100K. The Demio was slightly cheaper than this one, but some would sell it even a similar price. So the selling point for this car at that time, it was the boot space and the general space, because the legroom, you can't compare the legroom with the Mazdas of that time. it was really ahead of its time in terms of comfortability of the occupants and luggage. And before I forget, also, I keep on forgetting, the tail lights of this particular note, they were located at the top part of the car, just at the D pillar here. And this is an advantage, especially for those fender benders you get in town, because most cars you find the lights are here. It's very easy when someone hits you from the rear that you break it. But this one, it's, for most notes, this model, they're hardly broken, unless a bike accident that can really get to that level. Other than that, as you can see, it's flawless, original paint. Yeah. So I think we pop the hood so that you see a 1.5 liter. Yeah, and I tell you the car which this car shares the engine with. I know you know. Nissan guys mnajua hii. Okay. So the Nissan Note is powered by a, as I've mentioned, a 1500cc, or rather 1498. Let's call it 1500cc engine, and it's the HR engine, and of course it's just as I think I can call it a sub 100 car in terms of performance. But it's, what you need to know about this car is the engine is shared by the TIDA, or the semi-layer of manufacture. So most of the times, actually, when you are buying spare parts for this car, the guys tend to give you spare parts that are shared with TIDA, because everyone says they share, but there are some tiny things that they don't share. So you must check, make sure, especially maybe when you're buying things like the ball joints, make sure you really have to get the sample from the car. Just don't take any that you are given by the sellers out there. So even though it shares parts with Nissan TIDA, at times it is overgeneralized, and you can end up spending more, since some manufacturers, once the seal of the spare part is open, some, not all, some really do not take them back. So this engine, the transmission, that it's CVT, as I mentioned. So this CVT, first thing you notice about this car is it's not the fastest car. So this is the downside of this car right now. So it's not the fastest car. And if you're coming from maybe driving like an Impreza, even of that time, you might feel this car is very slow. But the good thing is, this car won't. Apart from the suspension, everything else is sound. So nothing else, just make sure you regular service. And please, I'll advise you, especially cars which are this size, even the modern cars, I advise people, do not go for the servicing after 10K kilometers. Always service after 5,000 kilometers. These are small cars, and having, even if it's synthetic oil, I'll advise you, just do 5K. Your engine will last longer, and everything will be smooth. But pushing these cars to 10K, I do not advise clients to do that. So that's the only tip I can give you about this. And yeah, I think that's it for the engine. Driving the Nissan Note E11, how does it feel? First impression, of course, it's already 8 years in the Kenyan market, and it was 8 years before it came in the Kenyan market. So practically this is like a 16-year-old car, and it drives like one. Of course, these cars, as I mentioned before, the main maintenance you need to adhere to is the suspension. These cars, the suspension really wears out pretty fast than most cars actually. Especially like if you compare cars like the cars people are importing during that time in 2015 and 2016, the NZDs, or the early Axios, the suspension does not wear out as fast as this one. Of course, the direct competition to this car is the Mazda Demios and the Vitz. Yeah, but I must say the ride is smoother than a Mazda Demio of a similar year. But normally such cars, I mean, as I said, they are reliable, but make sure you take care of the suspension. That's the only thing I can tell you about it. Well, it's a CVT. I remember when these cars first came out, the issue was most people didn't know about CVTs. These were some of the earliest cars to hit the Kenyan market with CVT transmission. And you could find your local mechanic. You take to a local mechanic this car, and they start telling you, in Swahili, they'll tell you, your car is not shifting. The gears are not shifting. It's simply because it was a CVT, and many couldn't. Our mechanics weren't exposed to that type of transmission. But now, of course, many cars which are being ported currently, they are in the CVT, they're using CVT transmission. So at least now the local expertise is quite acquainted to that. So as I said, the CVT transmission, you need to make sure you service the gearbox with the Nissan recommended transmission oil. Otherwise, you'll mess up this gearbox. So apart from that, yeah, the ride is okay. The ride is okay. Of course, it will do better with a newer suspension because it feels a bit firm. But one thing that I must admit with this car is you don't feel like when you're above 100 kilometers per hour, you don't feel like the car, like you are losing the car. Not times there are cars which you feel they are too unstable. Surprisingly, this car is quite planted, slightly, not like the best, but it's better than quite their competition. Yeah, the other thing which I like to mention is the distance between the driver and the co-driver and the windscreen. That's one thing I love about this car. There's good distance. And there's a joke I normally make with my friends that the Prado, the 95 series Prado, Land Cruiser Prado, you find that it's like your face, you feel like your face is almost hitting the windscreen. And I've never liked that. Any car that the windscreen is too close to the driver's face, I'm not a big fan of that. And that's one thing I really like about this car. You feel, even you feel, good circulation of air. The blind spots, none. It's very clear. You look at the rear view mirror, clear. I can see everything at the back. Yeah, so this was quite intelligently designed. And you can even, at times even, you can adjust this seat and you feel as if you're in a car with good clearance. And talking of clearance, that's one thing you need to watch out with this car. I will advise, if probably you buy this car locally, of course, this shape is there you'll only get it when it's locally driven. If it's not, if the previous owner hadn't adjusted the suspension and the ride height, I prefer you just put the aftermarket coilovers, so at least you get some good clearance. Don't overdo it because of your insurance. Yeah, so and also don't put too, don't make it so high that also it messes up the driving quality. Yeah, so that's it for this car is driving. Yeah, it's a good ride. This car, as I conclude, as you can see, it's been a workhorse, and you have seen so many, as I mentioned, of this kind, and it's a car I'll advise if you have it, there's no rush to sell it. Furthermore, not that you'll get so much money from it after selling it, so you can as well as keep it, just maintain it nicely. It's a very good incognito car. When you just want to go somewhere and no one recognizes your E250. But I'm sure because the ride is quite different from that. Most of you, once you upgrade, you don't like to. But trust me, there comes a time you have to go incognito, and this car will just blend in to any other car. Just maintain it. Suspension, especially the bushes. The bushes for the arms, for the front wheels and the cross member, you can be checking them every, let's say, after 30,000 Ks, you can be checking them to make sure they are sound. Yeah, but everything else, just no more routine maintenance, nothing much. So I have quite a number of suggestions for cars you should never sell, or cars never to sell, that will be featured in future. But also we have some surprises in between, which I'm sure you're going to like. And yeah, we might also get that new Note, and we do some proper research and ask around. Is the myth true? Is this Note better than the new Note, the E12? See you on the next one.